हेलो।
जी मैम,
हाँ, नाउ एम आई विजिबल?
मैं देख रहा हूँ ना, देख के बता।
वो सिर्फ टाइमर बताता है कि कितने टाइम तक आप लाइव हैं। और ये प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं मिला था?
हाँ, one person has
मम्मी में नहीं
seen
है।
it is showing. It is showing 4 people have seen. Okay, I think you are able to see me. So, very good afternoon to all of you. I welcome all the participants of this 2-day webinar, which has been organized by Adarsh Institute of.
हेलो
जी सर।
जी मैम, आप लाइव हो, आप है ना?
Okay,
आप live
thank
हो
you,
गए।
thank you. Okay, so very good afternoon to all. I welcome you all to this 2-day webinar, which has been organized by the Adarsh Institute of Management and Science, Dhamod, under the very able guidance of Professor Shailendra. This is a wonderful series whereby in these times we can connect with one another and learn some new things. So I'm here with my topic. In this, I'm going to discuss about parasitology. It is very difficult to give you a lot of information, but I will try to give you a slight peek into the world of parasites, a fantastic group of organisms. I hope you are doing well and also keeping very well in these trying circumstances. As you know, we are so seized by this pandemic that we have been confined to our homes. We are forced to stay in our homes. What I want to highlight in this is that what is the cause of this? The cause is a tiny microbe, a virus, which is so tiny, about, say, all viruses fall in about 20 to 200 nanometers in diameter. But this tiny virus has brought the whole world, all the functions, all the economies on their knees. So, I'm not going to discuss about the pandemic. I am here to tell you about another group of organisms which equally cause a lot of havoc in our lives. Only what we require is to pay a little attention to them. These are known as parasites, and parasites, if you want, what are the parasites? They are organisms which are present everywhere. They are present in our surroundings, they are present in our food, they are present. Hardly there is any animal or plant on this earth which is not parasitized by one or the other type of these organisms. So the study of the parasites is known as parasitology. So what do we study in parasitology? Basically, we study about the morphology, the functions, how these parasites, host relationships are helping each other out, how they're interacting with one another. And this field of zoology is known as parasitology. There is another term that we call as human or medical parasitology that is restricted to studying these parasitic organisms, only those which are important from the medical point of view. So in medical parasitology, generally we study about the organisms which are of medicinal value, which are of economic importance, which are of veterinary importance. Now, if you see the parasites, they fall under 3 major categories of organisms. One is the unicellular organisms, which fall under the kingdom Protista, or what we commonly know as protozoans, and the study of the parasitic or the protozoans is known as protozoology. Then on the other hand, we have the multicellular organisms, which belong to the kingdom Animalia and or the metazoans. So they fall under 3 groups. One of them consists of the flatworms. Flat means they are dorsoventrally flattened like a leaf. So they are commonly known as flukes, and they belong to the class Trematoda of phylum Platyhelminthes. If you are aware of zoology, Otherwise, they belong to a group what we call as flatworms. Then there is another group they are also flat, but they are very, very long, ribbon-like, and they are known as the tapeworms, and they fall under the class Cystoda under the phylum Platyhelminthes. So another group of the parasites belong to the phylum Nematoda, and these are commonly known as roundworms because they are not round, they are actually cylindrical, earthworm-like, and when you make a cross section of them, then it appears round. So they are commonly known as roundworms. So we have on one hand the unicellular protozoans, which are parasites. Not all of them, many are free living, but many of them are parasitic, and they cause one of the most important diseases of human beings. You may be familiar with it, that is malaria, apart from contributing to so many other parasitic diseases. Then we also have the worms. The worms basically, the trematodes and the cystodes, that is the flatworms and the tapeworms, they are exclusively parasitic. They cannot exist without this mode of life. And then we have another group, that is the nematode or the roundworms. These include both kind of organisms, free living as well as parasites, but they also cause many parasitic infections. You may be familiar with, like very commonly, the filariasis. Then there is caused by onchocerciasis or the hookworms. Then we have another group of parasites. What are the creepy, crawly creatures belonging to the phylum Arthropoda, class Insecta, also some arachnids, also some mollusks, which help the parasite in continuation of the life cycle. So we come to the question that do we need to study parasitology, or why do we need to study parasitology? So one reason could be that parasites are fantastic animals in the sense that they are very simple, the unicellular forms, protozoans, or the multicellular worms. But if you see their functioning, if you see their adaptations, they are so well adapted to this parasitic mode of life. They have developed such wonderful morphological and functional and behavioral features which help them to coexist in their host as parasitic organisms. So you can study them as a unique group of organisms, or like I said, they are having immense value in terms of economic importance, in terms of the veterinary importance, in terms of the medical importance. If you see the malaria, you can see the malaria is the hero of parasitology. You can say most of the funding for its research, for its studies goes into malaria, and still we are nowhere towards let alone elimination, towards effective management of malaria even today. So you may ask, how big is the problem of the parasites? Then let me tell you, humans are host to about 100 parasites, and approximately 1 in 6 people along the whole world, they have experienced some sort of parasitic infection. If you see malaria, the data of 2018 shows that 228 million people or 228 cases were reported, and out of this 85% of the global burden was borne by India and the sub-Saharan African countries. If we come to the worms, then about 2 billion people are infected by the worms. But you will be surprised to know that except for malaria, most of the parasitic diseases are included by the WHO under a category what is called as neglected tropical diseases. Because all these diseases generally affect the so-called poor economies or the compromised economies where the sanitation and the level of hygiene or basically what you can say less developed countries, So much focus is not there on these, but they do cause a lot of problems to humans. Then another importance could be that till date, even after spending so much of money, we are nowhere towards getting any vaccine. There is no vaccine license for any human parasitic pathogen till date. Another important could be that we are having, say, increased interactions with the animal world, and we are seeing there are so many organisms with so many diseases which were actually restricted to the animals, but now they have jumped onto the humans, and then they are causing such devastating effects. So these diseases which are restricted to humans, but when they are established in the human population, then these diseases are known as zoonotic diseases. Another problem is that even those parasitic diseases to which we have made drugs, the malarias, the leishmanias, and so many more, now we are faced with the problem of drug resistance. When we try to eliminate the vectors or those organisms which are there in the life cycle, then we are getting so much of insecticide resistance. So that is another field which is increasing. So all in all, the problem is very huge, but we have pushed it towards a back burner because we only wait, or we are only alerted when it hits us in our face and we are forced, like now we are forced to stay indoors. Another grave problem is that there were so many infections which were present in nature which did not affect the human beings, but these seemingly harmless organisms, when they enter the body of persons with a depressed immune system, say the immunocompromised persons with HIV or any other disease, then they become parasitic and cause devastating effects. Another great problem arising is the problem of foodborne diseases, and the WHO is still, studies are undergoing to get some data on what is the global burden of the foodborne parasitic diseases. So all in all, we have understood that parasites are important and parasitology is important. So we have the first basic question: what is a parasite? What is unique about it? I have told you. So if you go by the definition, then a parasite refers to an organism which depends metabolically on another organism for its food or nutrition, for its survival, for its residence, and for continuation of the life cycle. This is a very broad category, and you may argue that, say, like we know that the virus which is affecting now, it enters the cell and then it directs the cell to manufacture more virus particles. So are they parasites? Technically, they are not parasites, because parasite has to depend for food and shelter on the other organism which we refer to as the host. And viruses are non-living, they don't need food. Bacteria also are not technically parasites, because they are not dependent on the host for their metabolic requirements. So that was about the definition of the parasites. Now, if you see, there are many parasites, or rather most parasites, which cannot survive if they are not present on or inside their host. So these parasites are known as obligatory parasite, and one example is the malarial parasite, which we should be familiar with. Then a few parasites may not be completely dependent on the host. They do spend a part of their life cycle as free living organisms, but when they get the opportunity, they can adapt to the parasitic mode of life. Such organisms, parasites, are known as facultative parasites. For example, there is Naegleria fowleri, which is a free living organism, but it is found in water bodies. So if you are swimming in a water body and then it enters through your nose and mouth and it goes to the brain and causes such hazards which you will be amazed to know. Then there are still lesser number of parasites, like I said, which are normally harmless, which normally do not cause any disease in any organisms, but when they enter the immunocompromised body, then they show their parasitic action, and such parasites are known as opportunistic parasites. Then if you want, where they are found, if they are found on the body, on the skin, do not penetrate inside, then they are known as ectoparasites. And some parasites can live only inside the organs, the tissues, the organ systems. Then these are known as the endoparasites, which live in the internal organs and the tissues. Now, one more unique feature of the parasites is that they are very, very host specific. So much so that they are specific for the genus, for the species of the organism which they infect. Even in the organism, they are very specific for the organ which they are infecting. So that is a feature of the unique feature of the parasite, that they are very, very host specific. But even then, some parasites are able to enter some unusual host that is not their usual host. Say a parasite of dog, when it enters the young one of that parasite, when it enters the human beings, then it causes a very severe form of disease which affects the brain and functioning, what we call as a hydatid disease. Such parasites are known as accidental parasites. Then we have another category of parasites which can attack a host, where they cannot survive or they cannot develop further. Then these parasites will be known as aberrant parasites. Some more terms like a temporary parasite which visits the host for a short period, a permanent parasite which lives in the host for throughout its life, and we have two more categories of parasite. One is a hyperparasite, which is actually a parasite of a parasite. So these are generally found in the insects, and there is another category, the parasitoid. These parasitoids also live very closely associated with the host. They use the host's nutrition, they depend on the host, but they result in death of the host. So what is the difference? A parasite is so beautifully compromised with its host that it lives off the host. It feeds on the host, but it will never want to kill the host. So you can say it is a type of an interaction where the parasite is feeding, but it would want the host to live, because most parasites are permanent endoparasites and they cannot survive outside their host. Then if we see the life cycle, there are some parasites which require only one host, so they are generally transmitted by the oral fecal route, that is when the feces contaminated food or water is consumed, then the life cycle is continued, or by self-contamination due to unhygienic habits. But mostly parasites require 2, sometimes 3 or more hosts to complete their life cycle. In this, one host is generally a vertebrate and the other host is generally an invertebrate, and the vertebrate host mostly, or that host where the adult lives, that is termed as a definitive host or the primary host, and it harbors the adult forms which will reproduce and give rise to the eggs and help for continuation of the species. Then we have another, what we call as the intermediate host, the second host. The intermediate host generally harbors the young ones, what we call as the larva of the parasite, and both of these are important for the life cycle. It is not that one will be sufficient. Those parasites which use 2 hosts or 3 hosts, then they do use the 2 and the 3 hosts. All these are important for their life cycle. They cannot minus any one of the hosts. Then we have another category of host, that is the reservoir host. Now we know that human parasites are also present in the animals around us, the dogs and the cats and the cattle, the pigs. So the same parasite species are found in these animals, which is also a definitive host. So these act as a reservoir host, and they are very important in the continuation of the life cycle of a parasite in a community. They are the sources of infection which help to continue the infection in a given population. Then sometimes a parasite enters a host which is not its natural host, but it is able to live, it is able to survive. It may not develop further, but it will survive, and it will again cause infection. So this type of a host is known as a paratenic host, although it is not important for the life cycle of the parasite. So the question comes, how we get the infection, or how does one become infected by the parasitic organisms. So basically what we want is transmission cycles. So for transmission of parasites, we require three basic things. One is the source of the infection, from where the parasite is living. The other is it has to be transmitted through some agent. So that could be the water, it could be food, it could be the organisms, basically the insects which transmit them. Such insects which transmit diseases, they are known as vectors. This specific term differentiates them from carrier, because vectors are a part of the life cycle of the parasite. The parasite is going to carry out one part of its life cycle in the vector host, as compared to, say, a housefly, which is a carrier, where the life cycle of the parasite is not carried out, but physically on its body parts, it is able to transmit the parasites from, say, the fecal matter or the contamination to the uncontaminated food and water. All these three combined together will determine how the dispersal of the parasite takes place, whether it will be prevalent in a given place at a given time, and it is also important for the incidence of the parasitic disease in a certain local population, what we call as endemicity or endemic diseases. So what are the different routes by which this parasite enters? Like I said, they can enter through the water we drink, contaminated water. Where does it come from? Generally the soil, the helminths, they lay, the persons who are infected or the animals which are infected by the helminths, their fecal matter contains the young ones, and when we go for open defecation, or the feces is used as fertilizer, or the feces is washed into the water bodies, then it comes as contamination in the water. And as you know that this is a problem of most of the lesser developed or the poor countries that I talked about earlier. Then there are many fruits, vegetables which grow on the ground, which use these fecal matter as the fertilizer, so they can carry them. Apart from them, fishes, crabfishes, crayfishes, prawns, they are the intermediate host of many parasitic organisms. Pigs, cattle, buffaloes, you name it. Any animal is having some form of parasite, and this is not the time, we don't have the time to explain, but if you will see the parasites present in the normal foods that we consume, you would be very surprised. Then if you are, say, very cautious, you are not consuming these contaminated food and contaminated water, then also you can get the parasites. There are many parasites in the feces of, say, dogs or cats or animals, which when the feces dry, they can become airborne, and then you can inhale them through the nose, and they can cause the infection. And if you are extremely precautious, you are taking a lot of precaution for having everything neat and clean and washed and cooked properly, then also you can be infected, because there are so many flying creatures, the insects, the bugs, the lice, which are actually going to give this parasite directly into your body. They are going to puncture the body for their meal, and then they transmit the parasites in the body. So hardly anybody can be saved by parasitic organisms. So should we be worried? Little bit, because having an infection does not mean having a disease. Most of the people are able to contain the parasite. It is 90% of the people are asymptomatic. They are able to contain it because of the immune system. So again, we are coming just like the virus. We have to build our immune system. We have to be careful of the food we eat. We have to be careful of the surroundings. We have to be careful of not allowing fecal matter to contaminate our water bodies, to contaminate our foods that we consume. So how this will be achieved? Basically by participation of the community and the government. When both of them will work together, there is education, there is health education, then we can contain these parasites. Another method is that I told you, the vectors or the reservoir host. We can work towards containing them. Vectors, the insects can be controlled by insecticide, pesticide, molluscicides, development of the lands, clearing the bushes, not allowing water to collect. So this will help in the vector control. Even then, if you get, if one gets a disease, then there are drugs, but most of the drugs have a lot of side effects. So what do? We should go towards prevention, because in case of parasitic organisms, or maybe in so many other cases, prevention is much more better than cure. A line which I liked, I don't remember who said it, is that the most successful systems attract parasites. So you may interpret this as you wish, but if we are precautious, if we take care, if we remain safe, if we build our immune system, because getting a disease is just breaking the balance between our immune system, which is able to fight the pathogens, and the characteristics of the pathogen, which is making the effort to enter in our body, colonize it, and cause damage. So with this, I hope you will take caution, you will be safe, you will remain healthy. Before I sign off, I would like to thank Professor Shailendra for giving me this opportunity, and his team for conducting these series of lectures, which I hope will be beneficial for the target group, as well as anybody who wants to have some basic concepts in zoology as well as the environment. Thank you.